Hello YouTube, it's Ian here with Hobbies Man once again, and today we're going to be doing our top manga or best manga of 2022 list. Today we're going to be looking at 10 titles plus 3 honorable mentions, which actually ends up being about 5 titles. So it's a list of 15 different titles that I think are amazing, that I read this past year, that I think you guys should read in the next year if you haven't read them yet. Now I do want to mention, for clarity's sake, that they're like the best manga of 2022 that I read, but they're not necessarily my favorite manga of 2022 in certain cases, because I wanted to curate this list to be a little bit more all-encompassing. I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting than just telling you the top 10 shonen I read this year, because, well, I read a lot of shonen, right? And I also didn't want to just keep repeating the same manga over and over again across these different lists. So my honorable mentions are basically my things I read last year that I recommend you guys read this year anyways, because I finished reading them this year for whatever reason, right? So we'll start with those, then we'll move into our top 10 list. Number 10 and number 9 specifically are the ones that are not necessarily my favorite, but I found them to be very interesting in certain ways, and so that's why they're on this list, even though they're not necessarily like, oh my god, I love this series, right? So, just be aware of that. I'll kind of talk about it more specifically later on. So yeah, that's the disclaimer out of the way. That's, kind of my general ideas about this out of the way. Let's get on to the honorable mentions. Now, the first honorable mention, or the one I recommend the least, I guess, is all the manga that I read by Boichi this year. So Boichi is one of my favorite mangaka. He's not necessarily the best story writer by any means, but he's actually very, very good at drawing, in my opinion. He does have his own problems with drawing sometimes. Like, he has this tendency to make this specific pose that he puts all of his female characters in that makes it really ugly looking. I don't have like a clear example of it in my head. I think it happens in Sunken Rock the most egregiously, but there's this pose where he puts his female characters like with their heads forward, and it makes her necks look really long, and it's just like really like ugly looking. But everything else that Boichi draws is top tier. It is a little bit unnecessarily, sexy looking, I guess. But that's kind of a personal taste thing. If you don't like that, that's cool. But I mean, you can't really say that he doesn't know how to draw people, because he definitely does. He's very, very good at that. He's also very good at drawing mechanical design stuff. I would actually love to see him take on like an actual mecha kind of situation in one of his manga, instead of just like the kind of semi-robotic kind of stuff that he does for Origin. But the 3 manga that I'm recommending this year from Boichi are Dr. Stone. Technically he only draws this one, but still good. But the guy that is in charge of writing this definitely did a great job. However, it's not necessarily on my top list for 2 reasons. One, I already mentioned it last year, so that's one thing. And 2, I didn't really love the ending. I thought it was fine. Like, it was okay, it works, but it did feel a bit more like hey, we just want to go on to different projects, and this is a good place to end it, so let's just cut it off and move on. However, they did release a few different chapters later on after the fact, so I mean, Senku technically didn't finish doing what he was supposed to do, what he set out to do. So there's still definitely a lot of space to go, like a lot of space to traverse in the story. But it ended in a way where it's like, okay, from here he's definitely going to achieve the goal. So it makes sense to end it here. But it wasn't like super satisfying in my opinion. It could have been a little bit more interesting. So that's why it's there. Sunken Walk, I haven't read enough of it to say I love it, but it is really good. The art style is interesting. And with the interest in Yakuza or like gang manga lately, I think it's a good choice. I think it's interesting. It also doesn't have an English release yet. But if I mention it here, maybe it'll drum up some small interest from the few people that watch me. And that might actually be able to help tip the scales in our favor, get it released in English. Especially because lately Dark Horse has been releasing, or promising that they're going to release really interesting stuff. And Kadensha even actually decided to publish a different Boichi work that I'm going to mention here in a minute, just a little bit ago. So I definitely recommend that you guys check out Sunken Rock, And I definitely recommend that you guys put it on, different reader surveys, like the 7 Seas one. yeah, email Kodansha about it, or talk to Dark Horse about it, because well, it's a really good story. I definitely recommend that we get it in English. I just don't know if we ever will. So that's why I've been buying it from Spain in these really interesting 2-in-1s that are really nice and heavy, but they are a little bit cumbersome to read because of that weight to size kind of ratio. But Sunken Rock is really cool. I really enjoy it, and I really like Boichi's artwork. So yeah, and the last Boichi manga that I want to mention here is Origin. This one is the one that Kodansha recently announced they're going to be publishing in the US next year. I think sometime in the middle of the year, which is really good. I have already reviewed it. I have already read it because I bought it from Mexico. And maybe I will double dip and buy the English edition as well, just to do a quick comparison of it. But I'm not too sure, because I don't really find myself really interested in double dipping all that much for most series. But maybe for a comparison video, I'll buy the volume, make the video, and then resell it somewhere, or gift it out to a subscriber or something. I'm not sure. That would be a pretty good way of using it. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. But Origin is really, really good. If you like classic sci-fi robot movies, you'll probably like this. If you like iRobot, if you like Terminator, if you like Isaac Asimov, if you like, what else? I don't know, certain elements of Star Wars, like the mechanical elements of Star Wars, you might like Origin. It is interesting. It's really cool. It does have this kind of urban military feel to it for the vast majority of the story. It also has this really interesting heart to it with these two characters, the robot and this human female character. And then it also kind of ends up being kind of almost like Interstellar, in that kind of like, oh, we went so beyond our understanding of science that it basically feels like magic at the end of the story. So, if you don't like that, maybe it's not for you. But I do think that generally speaking, most sci-fi that tries to cover important subjects definitely does get into that realm eventually anyways. So it's going to be something that you're probably used to if you like science fiction. So yeah, it's really good. I recommend it. It's really, really awesome. It's a wonderful manga. Moving on to the next choice here, it's Vinland Saga. Now, honestly, I do think Vinland Saga is probably the best manga I read this year, but I mentioned it last year and the year before that, I think, as well. So I didn't want to mention it again as one of my top 10 books. So we're talking about it here in the honorable mentions. I read the Farmland arc, or the Slave arc, whatever you want to call it, and I have not, been so amazed or so captivated by a character choosing not to fight in any way, like the way I was for Thorfinn in this part of the story. It was so good. I really enjoyed the next arc as well. The Eastern Expedition arc was really, really great. It continues with Thorfinn's desire to not fight, his pacifism, his strength of character and power is really, really amazing. However, I do have one complaint about that one, about that part of the story, which is that I really would have liked to see Makoto Yukimura tackle, depicting Greece in this time period. I think it would have been cool. It's not really relevant to the story, so I understand that's why he didn't want to talk about it or mention it. But I would have liked to see part of that, and then maybe we will see it later on in some other situation where he comes back to the story in 20 years after he finishes it, and he's like, what, let me draw some parts of that story, or we'll see it in flashbacks. I'm not sure, but I would love to see that part of the story, but it is not necessary. It doesn't really have anything to do with the importance of the story, right? So it makes sense that they skipped it, but I would have liked to see it anyways. But Vinland Saga is significantly above and beyond most manga. It's so good. It's so amazing. Literally, it is one of the best things I've ever read. It is so good. But of course, everyone knows this. Everyone talks about it. Everyone has it in their collection. So there's no point in me mentioning it in this list, but I felt wrong not to. So here we are. And the last honorable mention here is One Piece. What is there to say about One Piece? It is over 1,000 chapters long, almost getting into 1,100 chapters in length, and it's so, so good. I do have some small problems with the way that the story developed in Wano. I didn't really like the ending. I feel like it was too rushed. And generally speaking, after the end of Wano, One Piece does feel rushed in general. But I feel like there was a certain level of a breath of fresh air that needed to happen after Wano. And I think Oda felt that as well, and that's why he finished Wano so quickly. Even though it had taken him 4 years to get to it. I mean, we could have waited another half a year and gotten a proper conclusion to it. But, it is what it is. I do have that small complaint, but overall, One Piece is the GOAT. It is, other than Vinland Saga, one of the best manga I've ever read. It's definitely probably the best shonen out there ever. It is top tier. It is the GOAT. Oda is amazing. His storytelling is awesome. His character designs are amazing. Everything about One Piece is top tier. Do not be afraid of the chapter amount. It kind of sucks because when you talk about One Piece, if I want to guarantee that you'll like it, which is never really a guarantee, but if I was me recommending it to someone, it's really hard to do because it's like, read the first 12 volumes, and if you don't like it, then you can stop. But it's like 12 volumes is like longer than most series people buy, or like unless you're collecting like long running shonen, right? But generally speaking, 12 volumes is a lot. So telling people, hey, just read these first 12 volumes, and if you like it, you'll like it, and if not, not. But the problem is that because of the structure of the story, the first 100 chapters are a prologue of the story, right? They are the little kernel of interest that develops, right? It's like the first chapter of a book. There really is no way around it. So it's hard to recommend, but it is amazing. I definitely think that everyone should read it at some point. Just read the first 100 chapters. If you don't like it, move on. It's fine. At that point, it's understandable that you don't like it if it just didn't jive with you. But don't quit in the second or third arc. Definitely read up to the end of the first saga of One Piece, and I definitely think that everyone will like it at that point. But that's it for One Piece. I don't really have to sit on my soapbox about it all that much. So yeah, moving on to finally the top 10 manga of the year, starting with number 10, Flowers of Evil. Now, like I said, this isn't necessarily my favorite thing. Usually I don't read things like this. I don't really care too much about the human condition kind of books. I didn't like them reading them when I was in high school, and I don't like them now. But there's something about the way Shuzo Oshimi writes people that is really interesting to me. It's on the list mostly because it is so different from what I usually read, and the fact that I enjoyed it is telling me that it's actually a really amazing book. So yeah, Flowers of Evil, everyone kind of has this in their collection as well. So it's not really something that is particularly interesting. Like it's not a crazy out of left field type of pick, but it is a really good one. It deals with this young boy who is going through puberty. He has a sexual awakening. He has these things going on in his life and his psyche. And along the way, he also has two female characters that are around him that affect him because of this sexual awakening and because of this puberty thing. One of them is a beautiful, good girl, and the other one is kind of this crazy, kind of psychotic girl as well. And he is constantly being pulled and pushed by them two, and he doesn't know where he wants to be. And I think he kind of leans towards the crazy psychotic girl because that's like more interesting, in the time period of his life that he's in. But realistically, he wants the good girl, and there's this like crazy pull and crazy like I don't know, like it's just so weird, and it's not necessarily something that everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, I understand this, but it definitely has like this certain feel to it that it's like, yeah, I don't necessarily have to understand this, like, or have lived through this to understand what this kid is going through. I think it's a pretty interesting kind of like reflection of something that a lot of people go through, not necessarily just boys, but also everyone, right? So I think it's interesting. It's also kind of ridiculously over the top about it, but it works. It's interesting, and it totally fits the medium of manga, while also being super interesting, dark, psychotic, like I don't know, like really weird, and it's really, really good. I definitely recommend you guys read it, and it's very, very good stuff. It definitely kind of feels more like literature than enjoyment than entertainment, but it's cool, it's interesting. It does give me these kind of like Steinbeck kind of vibes to it, which is really weird. I don't know why, but it does have that kind of like vibe to it. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but at some point I was like, I mentioned two different authors, two different writers, and I said that this Flowers of Evil felt like one of them too, or like those two writers combined, and one of them was John Steinbeck, but I don't really know if that's true. It's just kind of something that came to my mind, and it kind of stuck there, and so I can't get rid of that feeling anymore. So yeah, number 9 is Space Brothers. Again, I like this. I think it's cool. I really enjoyed it actually, but it's not necessarily my cup of tea. Like, it is sci-fi or science slice of life, but it is not necessarily something I care too much about. I don't really care about how they got into NASA or, you know, the JASA, whatever the Japanese version is. But I think it's a really interesting kind of story about following your dreams and developing yourself even after you think your dreams have left you, without having like an action shonen kind of vibe to it, like Kaiju number 8. Kaiju number 8 kind of has that same kind of vibe to it. It's this guy who's older and he wants to do something that he never managed to accomplish when he was younger, but he decided to put his mind to it as he was older, and maybe he might be able to accomplish it, right? So, it has the same kind of vibe as Kaiju number 8 in that sense. But of course, Kaiju number 8 is a bit more comedic, and it's also kind of childish because it's a shonen. Space Brothers is a little bit more legit. It's a little bit more adult. It's a little bit more, serious, I guess. But it's really good. I really enjoy it. I think it's something that my dad would really like, actually, because my dad is someone that wanted to be an astronaut as a child and never got around to it. He did eventually become like an engineer, and he worked on creating robots for companies so they could create glass structures and stuff like that. So, like, I think he managed to work in something that he liked anyways, but this story is like stuff that my dad loves. I remember I've seen countless amounts of space documentaries with him because it's something that really interests him, and I feel like Space Brothers is in that vein. If you're someone that really loves space documentaries and stuff like that, you'll probably really enjoy this, and you'll also be really interested in the slice of life elements of these people that want to be astronauts and the way that they're developing their skills and their strategies to deal with all of the pressure that comes with being sent in space and only having 5 people around you for like however long it is, right? So yeah, Space Brothers was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's not necessarily my favorite story ever, but it is one that I found really compelling in some ways. And it's also, something that adds variety to my list because, well, otherwise it would have just been a bunch of shonen series, and that's not interesting to you or to me. I don't want to talk about the 10 series that are basically all the same and derivative of like the older 10 series that are also derivative of the other older 10 series, right? So, my list is based on variety, but also on what really interested me, right? So, yeah, moving on to number 8 here, it's No Guns Life. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned this last year. I don't think so, but No Guns Life is an interesting crime noir type thing, but it also has a very interesting cyberpunk edge to it. It basically follows this guy who is an investigator, a private investigator, a PI, and he happens to have a gun for a head, and it's this kind of RoboCop, Judge Dredd kind of vibe to it. There's this cyberpunk situation where there's this corporation that basically runs this massive city, massive city, and there's this conspiracy, and there's these tools that were implanted into people, and then there's these certain groups of people that were actually turned into war weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, and there's this like massive conspiracy by some of these people, and our gunhead PI has to figure out a way to fix it. And there's also this kid that has like a special power that no one else has that allows him to control people that have this these special implants onto them. So it's really interesting. It's really hard to really explain what it's about because if I do, I feel like I ruin part of the story, part of the mystique of the crime noir kind of situation. So I don't want to say too much about it, but it's really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I think it's cool. I'm halfway through the story, and the last issue or the last volume just released this month, I think. So if all goes well, I'll finish collecting it by the end of next year, if not by July of next year. So yeah, No Guns Life is a really good story. If you like crime, if you like cyberpunk, you'll definitely enjoy No Guns Life for sure. And yeah, let's move on to number 7 here. Now this one is kind of a basic choice, which is Blue Lock. I don't know why. I really enjoyed Blue Lock. I got into sports manga this year, and I read a bunch of good sports manga. Slam Dunk, HAIKYU, Hikaru no Go. What else did I read? Blue Lock, of course, and a few other things. But Out of all of them, I think Blue Lock is the most interesting. I think it's because it has this kind of edgy element to it that the other sports series didn't really have. Because well, I wouldn't necessarily say that sports series are necessarily happy-go-lucky, but they definitely have a more like it's like go get 'em boys kind of vibe to it, which I really enjoy. I love it. I think it's cool. But the edgy kind of death game vibe that Blue Lock has was really appealing to me when I read it, and it's still really appealing to me now. I'm watching the anime, you know, as it's been coming out, and I don't think it's going as well as the manga, but I'm still enjoying it. I think the vibe of it and the style of it is really, really good, and so I've been really enjoying it. I think it's really interesting. It basically deals with Japan, of course, and the 300 best players of a certain age in Japan have been brought together into this like pentagon, hexagon kind of looking thing. I think it's a pentagon, and it's this building that is housing a program called Blue Lock, which is supposed to turn these 300 players into the best striker ever. And what it's actually doing is forcing these kids to develop their egos and to develop their skills in such a way that they're constantly grading on each other and they're sharpening their skills against each other. And eventually one of them will stand at the top of the world and be the #1 striker in Japan, and hopefully eventually maybe manage to make Japan win the World Cup at some point. Because the whole philosophy of this manga is that, you know, Japan's great at playing every other position, but there's no striker in Japan, and they need one, right? Otherwise, they can't really win, which, I don't know. It's not actually true. We've been seeing it in the World Cup recently. I think this video comes out after the end of the World Cup, but, you know, while I'm recording it, the World Cup has been going on. And Japan actually did really well. But it wasn't necessarily because they had a great striker. I think it was mostly, like, you know, like every other sport, it's about teamwork. And, you know, it is important to have one guy that scores a lot, but ultimately it is about a group of 11, right? and it's really interesting. It's really cool. It has that edgy undertone to it that I really enjoy because, you know, I'm not an edgelord or anything, and I'm not 14 anymore, so it's not like everything I consume has to be edgy. But it's fun to have that kind of edgy, like ridiculous, like it's do or die kind of vibe to it that I really like. So yeah, I'm happy to have read it. I really enjoyed it. If you guys are interested in sports manga, but maybe don't really like that all of them are kind of generally very happy-go-lucky, well, you might want to try Blue Lock. Now on to number 6 here, CHIHAYAFURU, another sports series to an extent. This is more of a memory game. It's not necessarily a sport, but it's kind of like chess in the sense that there's professional competitions, there's, you know, professional people that play it, but it's not necessarily like actually a sport. It's more like a highly valued game in society, if that makes sense. And it's really good, actually. So here, I think the most important part about CHIHAYAFURU is not necessarily the sports aspect, because I don't really care too much about the game that they're playing, Kurata or something. But I really love the character dynamic. It's about these 3 kids. One of them is a girl, 2 of them are boys. And the girl and one of the boys have been friends forever. Eventually, the other boy shows up at their school. He's from the boonies. He's a sad kid, but he has a passion and love for this game. And he shows these other 2 kids that game, and the girl falls in love with the game as well. And so they develop a friendship based on that game. Eventually, the 3rd boy that showed up has to go back to his little town because his grandfather passed away, and he becomes disillusioned with the game, and he loses contact with his 2 friends for a long time. Eventually, they come back together, and they manage to reignite this passion in him to an extent, I guess. And the girl and her childhood friend develop their own team at their high school in order to try to reconnect with their friend at like a big national sports event. And it sounds kind of weird, but it's so good. It is amazing. The art style is beautiful. The emotions that you feel are amazing. It has so much passion and power and like childhood heartbreak in it, and it's so good. It's just like impressive how amazing it is, right? Because it's a stupid sport that no one outside of Japan really gives a shit about, right? But somehow reading it, it's like shit, man. I love this thing. I love these characters. I love this, mangaka. I love this manga. It's so good. It is actually kind of ridiculously, well made, and I really like it a lot. So another sports manga that you might like if you don't really enjoy sports manga in general. So yeah, that's CHIHAYAFURU. It's also, I think, a josei. So if you want a little bit of variety in your reading, if you read too many shonen like I do, it might just be right up your alley. So yeah, so now we're talking about number 5 on the list, Mary Grave. Now this one I have mentioned before. I read it early in the year. I don't think I mentioned it on my previous top manga of the year, but I do remember mentioning it at some point in one of my reviews or one of my check-ins, that it's like one of the best stories I've ever read. And even though it was canceled and it had to end really abruptly, it was so good. Mary Grave is written by Hidenori Yamaji, I think is her name, and they're a mangaka that doesn't really have too much going on in the West. However, it's available in Mexico, so that's where I bought it. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it, actually. I even bought it for another Instagram manga grammar, I guess, who asked me to get it for her. And it's a really beautiful story. It kind of is an interesting storytelling device as well. Like, we follow this guy who happens to be an immortal, and we realize that the reason he's immortal is because his wife created a potion for him based on these ancient recipe. And it turns out that one of the things that you need to do as part of the recipe is find a life that is worth, find a way to imbue life into this other person is to give up a life, right? And so we find out that his wife gave up her life in order to return him to life. And now he is on a journey to retrace her steps, to get all of the things that he needs to create another version of this recipe, another, another dose of this magic potion, in order to bring her back to life so that they can finally live together and enjoy the time that they were robbed of in their youth, right? So it's a really good story. It's beautiful. It's really amazing because the storytelling device is, this guy goes to a place and he hears of things that happen, and then he realized that it was his wife. And so we were actually seeing his wife's travels through his eyes as he discovers it. And it's a really beautiful way of doing it. And it's just so good. Like, I love the art style. It's a little bit creepy. It's a little bit weird, but it's also really fun and really enjoyable. We get to see this guy develop and kind of grow as a person, not necessarily because he was wrong. He was actually quite of a good guy initially, but he's also a bit hardened and a little bit jaded. And so he meets people and things, and along the way, creatures. And each of these creatures imparts some knowledge to him about his wife, some knowledge that he didn't know he was missing, right? Something that he never got to experience because he was dead. And it's a really beautiful kind of like love transcends all, even death kind of vibe to it, and it's just so good. I definitely recommend it. It's also really cool because this mangaka had this story canceled for him or them. I'm not sure if they're a guy or a girl. I'm pretty sure it's a guy, but I'm not sure. And the story got canceled. They actually let themselves write out something akin to like, hey, this is how we're gonna end, but also here's how we can kind of come back to the story and retell it later. And then they started a new series called Sora and the Monsters Houses or something like that. And that story is actually coming to us from Seven Seas at some point next year, so that's going to be really exciting. I read the first chapter of it on in scans a long time ago, and it's a really cute story. It has that same beautiful kind of funny artwork, but it also kind of has that same like found family / like something you're missing out on, but you kind of get to experience later kind of vibe to it, and it's really good. So hopefully that series succeeds, and Seven Seas manages to bring Mary Grave over as well, because Mary Grave is amazing. I definitely recommend you guys find a way to read it. I think it's sold in Spain, and it's Italy and Mexico, and some other place. I don't remember exactly, but you'll probably be able to find it physically in some way if you want to, but there's other ways to read it if you need to. I don't necessarily like recommending things that people will probably end up rating on scans, but it is what it is. That's just the name of the game. So whatever happens, happens. So there you go. That's Mary Grave. I don't think I did a good job selling that one, but it's a really good story. Definitely check it out. It's only 5 volumes, so it's a really easy read. Then we have number 4 here, and again, another sports series, HAIKYU. Now, I do realize that I mentioned in number 6 that I liked Blue Lock over other sports series, but I mean, HAIKYU is just so good. Like, I can't not like it, right? I also read a significant amount of HAIKYU, a little bit more than I read for Blue Lock, so I think it just has an edge out in that sense. But whereas I like Blue Lock for the dark edginess to it, I love HAIKYU because of the stark brightness of its characters. It's just like, they're just so good. Hinata is such a good, like, cute character. Like, he's such a good kid, and I love his like crazy determination, his like almost psychotic love and interest in jumping high and having fun and playing volleyball. It's not a sport that I really care about. I don't think I ever played volleyball in my life, actually. Maybe once, maybe twice, I don't know. And honestly, I went into it not thinking I was going to like it. Like, I knew it was a really popular story, so of course it's good, but I wasn't sure that I was going to like it. But I read it, and God, it's so good. It gets me in the feels really quickly. Like, sometimes when they lose or when they have a tough, like, social situation and Hinata gets sad, it's like, oh shit, bro, I'm sad too. Like, it's just so good. It's like these characters are so masterfully crafted. They're just so good. It's really, really great. I love the dynamic of the characters. I love how there's like, the dark brooding guys, and then there's the super sunny cute guys, and then there's the like the more calm collected guy, and like the guy that's kind of angry, and all of these different characters that all come together into this wonderful like team, and it's really good. I don't know why I love it so much, but just something about it is really, really appealing. I think it's that sense of like bro community, I guess. I don't know what to call that. I guess like brotherhood is the right term, but of course it's a sports series, so there's a lot of Fujo bait, but and it's still quite good. I really, really enjoy it. It's probably the second or third sports series I ever read, or like I've ever consumed. The first one was free. I watched the anime a long time ago. I don't know why. I think a girl in my class told me about it, and I was like, okay, I'll watch it. It's only 10 episodes or something, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that HAIKYU definitely has kind of that same like vibe to it, but also it has like so much more to it, and I really love it actually. It's also a pretty good length for a shonen series. It's 41 volumes, which is a lot, but also not that much. Like compared to the big three, it's pretty small, pretty simple to acquire. But I read everything on the Shonen Jump app, so I'm not gonna buy it anyways. But I think it has a good selling point there, where it's like, hey, it's not that long. So yeah, but HAIKYU is wonderful. I really recommend it. If you guys have not read it yet, get on it. It's like top tier, man. And finally, we're up to the top 3, to the best manga I read this year. So starting with number 3, we have HARTGEAR. Now, this one has already been licensed by Viz. It's going to come out sometime next year. But it's been on the Manga Plus app for a long time. You can read it for free. And it was actually on hiatus for a long time. This is the same author as Black Torch, which I mentioned last year. But this is a sci-fi story. This is the single last human on Earth. This little girl called Inoue, I think, or something like that. Ro Inoue, I think is her name. Who is this little girl, and she has very bright purple hair, and she has this beautiful, wonderful, wondrous attitude to her. She's always amazed by everything, and she's really happy to live her life. But she lives with this research robot of some sorts. He kind of looks like Baymax. And one day they find another robot whose name is Chrome, and he ends up being a combat robot, and his prime directive turns into protect Ro. And then they get attacked by this crazy machine, this kind of AI that has been corrupted by the eternity of, like, you know, the amount of time that it's gone on, and it just has not been able to resist, right? It's basically the same thing that happens with like immortal characters, where like one day they just crack because it's just too much of a strain on their mind to live for that long. These AI kind of happen, and this happens to them too. And the Baymax character, her dad, basically is injured, and they have to take his memory core somewhere so that they can give him a new body. And so they go on this epic adventure, and it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's so good. The art style is amazing. The questions and thoughts that are provoked by the story are really interesting. Like, what does it mean to be alive? You know, it's classic sci-fi fare for, you know, robotics and stuff like that. Like, basically every robot story ever, it's like, what does it mean to be human? Are we alive? And how do you define living and not living, right? And it all deals with like robots and like them being analoged for like what it means to be human, and kind of defining why we are human, right? And how it's different from them, or how it's not different from them, right? And this story deals with that. It's pretty classic, pretty standard, but it's just done so well. And it's really beautiful. It has awesome action set pieces. It has awesome character design. I don't know why, but the way Tataki Tsuyoshi, I think is his name, draws characters is just immensely appealing. Like, so good. And also his like scratchy, like refined but not necessarily completely finished kind of style is super good. I love it. I actually really enjoy this manga's artwork. I really love Black Torch. That one is kind of like a better version of Blue Exorcist, I guess. But, you know, it got canceled, or it stopped. And I think it's because manga had horrible health. He still has horrible health, but he has managed to come back to do at least 10 more chapters of his story of HAIKYU. So we have at least 4 volumes of HAIKYU right now that you can read on the Manga Plus app that are eventually going to come out in physical volumes from Viz. And it's just really good stuff. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. I mean, it's available for free from you know, a legal source, so there's no reason why you shouldn't check it out. And it's also just really good stuff. So yeah, that's number 3. Now moving on to number 2, we really get to the end game here with Bride's Story. It's such a good story. It's such a beautiful manga. It has amazing artwork. Kaori Mori is something else. Like, she is like leagues above most mangaka. Like, the way she draws is amazing. And Bride's Story is about it's about this bride, and she is some sort of Mongolian person, and they live in these like steppes somewhere in like that area of the world. I'm not sure if it's Mongolia necessarily, or if it's China, or if it's one of the stans, you know, up, you know, towards the middle of the Asian continent. And they have traditional, you know, clothing and stuff like that. And it looks really beautiful, and Kaori Mori does a great job at like drawing these beautiful things. And we see this woman. She's from a more traditional clan, people that still roam the steppes, like you know, they're like nomadic. And she is married to this young boy. She's like 20 something, and he's like 13 or something. And she's married to him, and she joins this family who don't live a nomadic lifestyle anymore. They live in a small town. And she joins them, and she has growing pains basically from the fact that everything is different here. Everything is done like differently from how she's used to. But she grows attached to the boy, and she grows attached to the family she's with. And eventually there's drama because her family needs her back. They're like, okay, you know, this other guy wants a wife, and we gave him one, but things didn't work out, so he wants another one. And we'd rather piss you guys off than piss off that other guy. So give us back our, you know, woman. And the family is like, no, she's ours now. We will not give her away. She is part of our family now. And so there's conflict there. And I don't know what happens after that, but because I haven't read it yet. But it's just a really wonderful story. It gives me really interesting vibes. It's really cool. There's this like European character that's like hanging out with that family because he wants to know. And sometimes he gives this really interesting insight into this culture, and sometimes he doesn't. But it's just a really good story. It's really beautiful. It has like this amazing like adventure story vibe to it. even though it's mostly a slice of life, and it's just really, really good. Like, I don't know exactly why I love it so much. I don't think I can really word it, but it's just immensely satisfying to read. So there you go. That's number 2. Number 1 is Witch Hat Atelier. If you guys have recently been following me, I've kind of been on a bit of a binge there with Witch Hat. I've been trying to collect as much of it as I can. I only have 2 more books left to be caught up. I need to buy number 9 and number 10, of course. And, well, it's a really good story. I love magic school-esque settings, and Witch Hat Atelier technically is not a magic school, but it has a teacher, and the teacher lives with these little girls that are his students in this little, like townhouse. So they do have a tiny little school. So it is like a magic school setting. But it's about this girl who is, entranced. She loves magic, but she was not born with magic ability, which is actually not true. Like, anyone can use magic, but the way you use magic is a very specific way. And it's more like a science or a math kind of thing than more like an intrinsic power. And one day she is bamboozled by this evil witch, and she ends up using magic in a way that she shouldn't be. And so her mother gets turned to stone. A good witch shows up, and he tries to help her. But of course, there's laws that cause people to not be able to use magic on others, that limit witches' abilities to do things. And so this girl has to go and become a magic student so that maybe one day she will be able to fix her mother and save her from, this thing that she caused her. And so we go on this beautiful adventure through this magic society, and it's really beautiful. It's really amazing. Most of it is a really happy-go-lucky kind of like, look at magic, it's beautiful and it's amazing, and look at all these characters that we're meeting that are all so wonderful. But every once in a while, every couple chapters, there's like this like deep sense of gloom and disaster that just kind of follows the characters, and it's just so good. The art style is also amazing. Like, actually, it is ridiculously good. If Kari Mori is above, most people, Witch Hat Atelier's manga, Kimura Shinamone, something like that, is way above. Like, honestly, I feel like this list is mostly just like mangaka I like manga that draw really well. But also it's mostly about the stories. It's about the things that I feel while reading this. The paneling in Witch Hat Atelier is also ridiculously interesting. It's not conventional, but it's also like really well done. Like, there's these times where the paneling is not squares like usual, and it's not like set up in grids, but rather it's a bunch of circles, and these circles lead to a certain like image in the center, or there's these like situations where the pages are framed by these beautiful scroll works at the edges of the page in order to provide this kind of like postcard feel to what's happening on the screen, or like on the paper, on the page, and it's just beautiful. It's like actually really good. So yeah, that's it. That's my top 10, my actually top 15 manga that I read this year, or that I recommend you guys read next year. It's the best manga of 2022. My top 10 list with 3 honorable mentions, which actually ends up being 15 different books. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what your top 5, top 10, top 15, top whatever manga were this past year, and tell me, if you agree with my choices, if you disagree with my choices, if I said anything that was stupid, if I didn't say anything that was stupid, if I said anything that was particularly good, let me know down in the comments. And thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys later.